Chambers, City Hall Chambers. It's Thursday, October 25th, 2018. It is 8:28. Roll call, please. Ms. Ellison.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Staunton.
Here.
Chair Hovland.
Here.
Commissioner Brindle.
Here.
Commissioner Stewart.
Here.
All right. We have a form of agenda in front of us for the meeting today. Is there anyone who wishes to modify the agenda? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as shown.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion second to approve the meeting agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Community comment. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council? Seeing no one but staff back there and interns. Casey, this is your shot. All right. You can talk to the HRA about your feelings about the council, you know?
She loves the council. She thinks they're doing a great job.
She was told to say.
So we've got a consent agenda. A couple of items on there. Is there a motion to adopt the items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion second to adopt the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. We're on to reports and recommendations. We've got some project update leading us off there, and Mr. Neuendorf is right over there where the chief of police usually sits. So, all right.
Yes. Good morning. We don't have don't have a very full agenda this morning. It's nice to take a break for a moment. But I did include in this week's packet an update on all of our active projects and also some inactive projects, but the ones that are relevant. I'm not going to read through the whole document, but it is in there. I just want to give you a quick update on a few of the projects that we're actively working on. The 4500 France Apartments, we are preparing a full redevelopment agreement based on the terms that were discussed and approved at the last few meetings. Down at 50th and France, we're pleased to announce that the North project, the North parking ramp, is substantially complete. That was turned over to the city from the contractor on Tuesday. So they're still doing a little bit of touch-up work, touch-up paint, finishing some fence work, those kinds of minor items. But that ramp is fully open with about 550 some new parking stalls that are clean and bright and new. So it's nice to have that project finished. And we're working on a date for a ribbon cutting type of event, probably in November. We're still waiting for the external artwork will be installed in a week or two. So we want to get everything buttoned up. Then we'll have folks out there for a small ribbon cutting, and also to show some appreciation for the employees down at 50th and France that have made some sacrifices this year working through the construction. We really try to prioritize customers and clients at 50th and France, and sometimes that meant that employees down there had to park in different places and make some sacrifices. So we want to thank them for their ability to be flexible this year.
Good question. Go ahead, Member Stewart.
Mr. Neuendorf, is there some hope that now having really sufficient parking available for 50th and France, that despite having to walk around some construction, we might have a reasonably good retail season this holiday season at 50th and France, or is it just, you know, it's going to be a construction site, it's going to be perceived that way, and we should just prepare for a difficult season?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'm not going to predict the fortunes of retailers, but certainly with the construction work cut in half, it should be a much more easier place to navigate. The road, the Market Street, is still going to be one way. We are slowly transitioning to make it two-way, which is nice, but that's still probably several weeks away. We have asked the contractors to be very diligent about recognizing the holiday season, which starts mid to late November and will go through the end of the year. As far as marketing for the project, something unusual, but for the city, But this has been such a large project that we condensed from 3 years down to less than 2 years, so there's been a lot of commotion. So we are doing marketing. We started last month just to remind shoppers that the shops are still open. It's still a great place to shop, whether it's getting your groceries or your gifts or your favorite services and salon appointments. So we will continue that effort through the holiday season to market the whole district and remind folks that while there's a construction site down there, that construction site is on half of a block, and the whole district is 6 to 8 blocks. So we don't want to let that dissuade folks from coming down.
We need to trumpet the fact that we've got 500 new spaces available, or in that north ramp, and somehow make sure that word gets out as effectively as we can, so we can encourage people to come down there. That's nice to hear.
A follow-up
Yes,
question, if I
Member
may.
Brindle.
So the completion of the north ramp is near, and or full completion, I should say, and that includes landscaping on the north side. And I want to make sure that that's incorporated in that completion process as well. Where are we with that?
Yeah. So the landscaping on the north side is in. That went in a couple weeks ago. So that portion of 50th and France was always kind of the shortcut, kind of the leftover space. So now when you drive down there, there's street trees. There's native grasses and flowering plants. They're starting to go dormant, as you would imagine. There's street lights, so it's effectively lit as you walk down there, something that was always kind of sporadic in the past. We're still finishing up a little bit of the landscaping work behind the ramp. There's about a 12-foot gap between the ramp and the property line, and they're doing some fencing work right now. When the fence is finished, they'll come in and finish that landscaping in the rear. But if you're visiting the district, the landscaping is in, and it really adds some new life to it. You'll also notice on the front of the buildings, we did that landscaped wall. And so there's planter boxes that have the plantings in them. There's small irrigation drip lines that will serve those plants throughout the seasons. So those are in. It'll take a couple seasons for the vines to grow and look as wonderful as it did in the renderings, but all that work was finished in the last couple weeks.
So thinking of the landscaping behind the parking structure, because there's been considerable angst around that, just want to make sure that there is a plan in place to complete it and a plan in place to maintain it. Because it's the city's to maintain, is it not?
Well, I'm not sure which one you're referring to. So there was one neighbor who lives very close. Their building is set towards the rear of the property.
That would be the one.
Whereas all the other neighbors are set close to the property.
Yep.
So the landscaping that was installed there is theirs. It's on private property.
Okay.
The city did reimburse them for the new landscaping. As part of the construction, we did disturb, or were close to disturbing, their existing trees. So we worked out an arrangement with them where we took down the old trees, and then her landscaping just went in also about a week and a half ago.
Okay.
So that will be that owner's responsibility to maintain. Okay. But on the rest of the city's property, especially in the rear, Brian Olson has a term. It's low grow, no mow type of grass planting. So it's behind the ramp where theoretically there should be no one back there. It's just a little dead space. Over the decades, it's been an area where somehow grass clippings and tree branches seem to collect. So we put a larger fence there to give privacy to the neighbors. But that area should require very little maintenance.
Okay.
The areas in front, the new trees, the new plantings, that definitely requires maintenance, and there is a maintenance plan in place for all of those items.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things that created, at least in my mind, so much vibrancy for the neighborhood was the artwork that we were going to put on the wall on the east side. Is that the artwork you're talking about?
Right.
That'll be just a spectacular addition, I think, to the environment down there.
Correct. Yeah, there's actually two art installations on this project. So the east is about 10 feet wide by about 30 feet tall. It's made up of 18 individual panels. We worked with a task force, some focus groups, the businesses down there. That's the one we did a general survey to the community, had about 800 folks respond within a couple weeks. So that work is in fabrication right now and scheduled to be installed either the week, it's right around Halloween. So it should be in there by the first week of November is my understanding.
So I don't remember ever seeing a rendering of that.
We did.
It was maybe at one of those early 7:30 a.m. meetings, but yeah, we saw several renderings. I can recirculate that if you like.
Yeah, that'd be good to have it recirculated.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead.
Certainly.
Continue on, please.
Yeah, and then switching over to other projects, just wanted to give everyone a reminder and a heads up. Through the City Council and the Planning Commission, there's currently a proposal to redevelop the properties at 7200 and 7250 France. And we did have a chance to meet with the developer's representative about a week and a half ago, and he did confirm that they will be seeking tax increment financing to help support that project. This is the site where every developer that's approached the city with this site has recognized that there's a large infrastructure need here with the stormwater improvements there. And certainly that's one of the reasons why a community would use a funding tool like tax increment. So at this point, they have not made any formal application. We have not been discussing dollar amounts or anything of that nature. But I just wanted to make it clear that when I spoke with them, they did confirm that in order to meet their project requirements of it getting it funded, TIF would be part of the discussion. So I would expect as that plan works through the Planning Commission, it'll be tweaked. I think when it goes to City Council, probably tweaked some more. As their project tends to come into greater clarity, I think they'll focus on their numbers. And then I would expect to bring a draft term sheet to this group late November, early December. So as I know more, I'll definitely brief everyone, but I just wanted to give you a forecast on that. And then the last project, just an update and reminder that we did set the public hearing date to consider a different TIF district. This would be for the creation of that Aon affordable housing project on West 76th Street. So a public hearing has been scheduled for November 20th. And we're working through all the state mandated steps of having the right plans distributed to the right folks at the right time, but that will be on our discussion topic before the Thanksgiving season.
Commissioner Fisher.
So how does that equate with when does Aon find out about their request for funds through the Minnesota Housing?
Yeah, so the Aon project receives its greatest financial support through Minnesota Housing. That's the tax credits that will fund most of the project. They hear formally in November, early November. Sometimes you might get a sneak peek with a staff memo or something in late October. But before we have that public hearing, we'll know if that project received its funding. So the city did step up and commit, or we did pledge some assistance, some financial assistance, but the largest chunk comes from the state.
Two quick questions for me on, I had someone stop me the other day. I'm looking at your last page, which is the Ahmanson, the old Waldorf Nevins property that was purchased by the Housing Foundation. Someone stopped me and said, gee, I heard there was going to be 400 units of apartments on that site.
I heard 800.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
can we start to put some of these rumors to rest and if the Housing Foundation sells it, what it is they're looking for and how that potentially matches up with the small area plan that's being worked on over there in terms of height and density?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Hawkinson, the Affordable Housing Development Manager. Tomorrow is the deadline for 3 potential developers to submit proposals for that site. None of them will be 400, 700, or 800 units. The most that we're seeing thus far is 100 units. With the density and height restrictions that's currently being proposed by the small area plan, None of the proposals, from my understanding, will be compliant with what is currently being proposed by the small area plan. The fewest units, and I haven't seen the proposals, they're due tomorrow, from my understanding are about 68, and so that would not be aligned with the plan.
68 stories.
68 units.
68 units, okay. Thank you for that.
There went the effort to quell rumors.
Yeah.
You
Thanks
heard
for that
it here,
clarification.
folks.
All right. And the other question I had for Mr. Neuendorf is on the Old Public Works site. Is staff intending to come forward with any recommendations at some point in time here after the first of the year? Or,
Yes.
sometime in the next few months?
Yes, there's been some newspaper stories about that site in recent days. So with the property at 5146 Eden Avenue, the Old Public Works site, we did terminate the agreement with the preliminary agreement with the Franchise companies. Staff will come back in early part of 2019. We're thinking January, and come back with a recommendation to move forward again with that site. The challenges still remain. There's some big decisions that will have to be made about the level of investment the city wants to put into that property. But based on what we've learned through this year's efforts, we had architects end up drawing 4 different scenarios of trying to get different things to fit and trying to get the numbers to align. We've learned quite a bit about what can be, what that site can accommodate. But at this point, it's people have asked me about the process and the timing and can they be first in line. There's definitely interest in the marketplace for that site. We want to bring the topic back to this group in January to start the conversation, and then we'll go out to the community, development community.
Do you think it would be worthwhile either us sitting as the HRA or the council having a work session with you on that property before you start coming forward with any ideas?
Yeah.
I mean, one more go around as people have had a chance to kind of digest what happened with Franchise, and would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Seems to me that it would be. So maybe you can think about wherever you think it should appropriately land, HRA or council. I think a work session would be worthwhile.
Yeah, I think so.
Commissioner Stewart.
I wanted to follow up, if I may, on unrelated things, but as we were thinking about and as we were reading through the list of the updates on the projects, Mr. Neuendorf, the corner at York and 66th, I thought was noticeably absent. I know we haven't finished. I know that the project for the Homewood Suites Hotel has been completed and that hotel is now open. I believe construction has started on the old Best Buy site, but the Titus Building site is not started at all. And so I'm wondering if you can update us on when we might expect the Best Buy site building to be completed, and remind me of the name of that one. I'm not thinking of it right now.
Sure.
And then what's going on at the Titus Building site?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of activity over at 66th in York. So where the old Best Buy site building had been, so that is now called the Aria, Edina. I forgot the number of units, but it's interesting as those projects get approved through zoning, they and then they go to the market and work with the architects. The actual number of units tend to come down. So I know initially that site was approved for about 200 units. I think they're actually building about 168 in that range.
Less, yeah.
But that'll be a 6-story building with townhome style on the front and sides. And I believe they are on 6 stories and their roof is going on. So I believe they're aiming to put folks in that building in early summer of 2019. So over the winter months, you'll start to see the skin coming on, the windows going in. There's some big progress there.
I believe that project is 5% affordable. It was approved before we had a policy of the 10 and 20%. So it was really a voluntary offering, if you will, to us to be part of the affordable housing for us. So it's, I believe, 5%.
Yep, I believe that's correct. There's about 6 or fewer than 10 affordable units in there, but they were agreeable to doing some. And then kitty corner from there, where the tightest building is, DLC is the name of the firm that bought the property. The current proposal is called the Millennium Southdale. And I don't know the status quite honestly. They were approved.
Will the clock run out on their? I mean, they have an approval from us, so won't the clock run out at some point?
Yeah. So through the city council and the rezoning, they did have an approval. I recall that they extended it last summer. They get Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a 2-year approval period. They were getting close to that time, so they were granted a 1-year extension this summer. We met with them in July to kind of see where they're at and what they're thinking. And they were kind of feeling us out for different options. They were thinking about going for a different market segment. Certainly there's been so many units that are aiming at the same renter, same price point, same amenities. And I think they were looking into options of trying to go for a different renter, perhaps a senior-only type of building. But it's been a few months and we've not heard back what their plans are. So unfortunately, I don't have any specific dates for them, but they still do have a valid rezoning. I believe it is their intention to move forward with phase 1. The second phase was still, several years out, but I would expect them to come forward sometime in 2019.
Thank you. Good. A couple quick follow-ons. I just got an email yesterday that the Shake Shack is doing its grand opening next Tuesday at 10:30 in the morning. So if anybody has time to run over there, cut a ribbon.
I'm waiting to see what Bob's schedule looks like.
I did notice the lights were on.
We did Walk with the Mayor in the Grandview area on Saturday, and folks from, what is that, Evador over there? They said they had 20, so they're about a year out too, I think, or maybe less than a year out. They had, I think less than a year out. They had 25 reservations so far, and I think they thought that 20 to 25% of them were in the, I'll call it the snowbird range, where they would be moving out of their homes and moving into that 55 plus housing and be here for only half the year, but still wanted to maintain a presence in Edina. So anyway, so that was the report from them on that particular effort to.
So the other project that is sitting and we're anxiously waiting for something is the Avenue on France.
Yeah, the Avenue on France, that's the 2 office buildings, some connector buildings, and the Tavern on France, Bank of America. So that site was approved a couple years ago. I did not include it on my list because at this point there's no HRA incentive or any involvement of that nature. When I last connected with the developer, it was still their intention to move forward. My understanding is that they've had some internal conversations about timing and what piece goes first, but I don't have a specific date for that project.
And then the project on 49th Street behind the Great Wall of Vernon Avenue, that looks like they're pretty far along. Is that?
It's coming along. Yeah. That's on 49th Street, just west of Highway 100. It's called Hawthorne Condominiums. I don't think they've renamed it the Great Wall yet, but smaller project. So 12 condominium units built in a single building with underground parking. Roof's been on for a while. Walls are up. I think windows are starting to go in.
Windows are in. I would go over there this weekend.
Are they?
It looks
Super.
good. It's a great looking project.
Yes.
In those 2 standalone patio homes, whatever you want to call them.
Yep. Yeah.
Very nice.
And then they'll have a total of 5 of those standalone. So they built the first couple, use those for marketing and to let buyers know what they are. But each of those units are all for sale units rather than apartments. So I think as they sell the first couple single units, they'll start building the remaining 3.
So back to Avenue in France for Member Brindle. I did talk to Dennis Doyle briefly one day, ran into him in the hallway, and he said they were going to be back to us towards the end of the year. Their partner, Olympus, which is Dick Schultz's real estate arm, is moving into 6600 France. I think they were trying to wait for them to get settled. They had to figure out the parking outside 6800 France. and they'll be coming back to the council with some ideas. And I can't tell you much more than what you know, but I did have a sense that that their first effort was going to be between 6,800 and 6,600, maybe taking those buildings out and looking at some office space, but that's a little bit of guess on my part. As opposed to the retail, remember they were thinking about retail.
Right.
Moving Tavern on France south of the drive aisle. I don't hear much about that anymore. I didn't hear much about the retail along France. I did hear about parking accommodation outside of 6,800. Nothing more about the condominiums other than they said they didn't think that would work from a financial modeling standpoint. And so I expect that we'd see something on the Class A office type. Okay, so you quickly want to cover this other matter? We have two informational items only here.
Yep, the second one will.
Stephanie's going to handle that one, I guess. Welcome back up, Ms. Hawkinson.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. This will be brought to the City Council in December as part of the annual fee schedule when you discuss it at that time, but I wanted to bring it forward today in case there were some additional questions as it relates to affordable housing. What is going to be proposed is currently the Met Council and the City of Edina have sewer and water access charges on new development projects. Met Council allows that if a project meets certain conditions, including affordability, they will reduce the rate, their SAC rate, their sewer access charge fee. I would like to propose that the City of Edina follow suit, that if they get approval from the Met Council, that the city will also recognize in our fees the same types of reductions for the same conditions. This is important for projects, especially that are 100% affordable, where the fees can be rather high. And when they seek outside funding, especially from the state of Minnesota, they have a predictive model, the state, about how much a project should cost per unit. And if the project costs more than this predictive model, it is flagged as not getting funding. It requires additional scrutiny and has to go through more litmus tests on whether or not they're going to consider it for funding. Sometimes that change in cost of construction can be as little as $5,000 per unit. That could put it in a different pile. Our access charge could bump a project over that level. So I'm proposing that we reduce our fees for these types of projects that meet these conditions that are aligned with the Met Council conditions in the same way. So a letter would come from the Met Council saying that they meet the conditions, and then we follow suit. And this will be presented again in December as part of the overall fees that were fee schedule.
Commissioner Staunton.
So help me understand the mechanics of the WAC and SAC fees. Are they passed through to the Met Council? Do they come to us? Do we each charge WAC or SAC? How does that all work?
In this city, there's both the Met Council SAC fee and the City of Edina, we call them the rec fees, the connection fees, for both water and sewer.
So we charge
so they're
separate
charged,
fees.
Correct. Chair, Commissioner, they're charged at the time of permitting, my understanding, and we charge for both the Met Council and the city's fees. Then we pass on to the Met Council their fees, and we keep ours.
And as I understand it, these fees are designed to compensate us for, roughly anyway, for actual costs that we have for our system, kind of access to our
proxy
system.
For that, right? For kind of previous capital investment.
But it's in that category of regulatory recovery of fees as
Yes.
opposed to, this isn't some way of raising money.
That's right. That's right.
And so when you talk about the conditions that are in the proposed policy, it strikes me that one of the things we're doing is reducing the actual flow because of the common laundry facilities instead of having ones in the units or no garbage disposal or no dishwasher. So you're changing the profile of the actual outflow in any of these units.
That was the rationale. So of the Met Council and I can't speak for them, but I understand that was the purpose behind it on behalf of the Met Council when they came up with these restrictions. Yes.
So, I mean, I guess what I'm driving at is it sounds like it's a recognition that in certain formatting or construction configurations, there's going to be less of a burden on the system, and we ought to mirror image that with less of a charge, which then can allow the projects to move forward.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Brindle.
So we've actually done a similar thing once to a commercial establishment where we took their fees and spread them out over time. So I want to clarify, is that what we're doing here? And collecting the fee, but not all at once, but spreading it out over time? Or are we reducing it? And if we're reducing it, let's see, incorporating. So what would the original fee be and what would the reduced fee be?
Manager Neal.
If I can jump in, I can answer that question because that's a different program. What Commissioner Brindle is asking about, we have a different program for, I think, small commercial. It might even be restaurant, I think, isn't it, Mr. Neuendorf, where we allow some classification of small business to essentially finance their SAC fees.
Right.
Right.
Last year, the city chose to participate in a program that Met Council's offers to defer those fees for small businesses. That way, it really helps those startups that can't handle, an $80,000 add-on, but they spread that out over time. This program is something completely different.
Completely different. So, in fact, completely different in every way because it's applying to residential and not commercial, and it's reducing, not financing.
Commissioner.
So the original fee, what would the original fee be and what is the reduced fee? I'm looking at this report and I see the current charges. So I just want to clarify what the reduction is.
The reduction is, Chair, Commissioner, there's two layers. And so the fee that's being charged per unit, per housing unit, right now is the $3,434.70. That is what is the Edina. That's the Edina portion that is being charged under the current fee structure. With there's two levels. There's a 20% reduction on one level. That's the apartment conservation discount. And then there's a second layer, and that's a 25% additional discount if they're for the public assisted housing and another conservation discount. So the fee afterwards would be $1,889 from $3,434. So it is a 45% reduction of the fee.
All right, and that's a per unit.
That's a per unit.
That's a per unit reduction.
Per unit reduction.
All right. I just, I read it and I thought for those people who are listening to this, we should really explain it because they're going to read this and possibly not understand it completely. So, all right.
Correct. And
terrific.
This
Thank you.
I would like to add this is completely voluntary by the developers whether or not they want to include what's necessary to get these reductions, which would be community laundry, no garbage disposal, no dishwasher. If they want laundry in the units, garbage disposals and dishwashers, they don't qualify for this reduction, and that's purely their choice. But often affordable housing developments do have these construction elements in place, and so why not benefit from the reduction? And it decreases the cost of construction.
Great, thank you.
All right, with respect to that potential 25% discount in a situation where you got a multi-dwelling publicly assisted housing unit, what does publicly assisted mean?
Chair, Commissioners, the publicly assisted means that there is some sort of public financing involved with the construction of the development. That could be TIF, that could be gap financing. It's some sort of participation by a public entity.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be the city as the public entity. It could be Minnesota Housing Finance, or it could be the county, or it could be the Met Council.
Correct.
All right, okay, thank you. And maybe you should include, when you come forward with the proposal, there should be a definition of that in there.
Will do.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, thanks for that information.
Thank you.
All right, we have no communication, I take it? Further communication? No. What we've had. All right, any comments from HRA commissioners on any matter?
Well,
Commissioner Brindle?
The governor's report on housing was released about a month ago, and as I went through it, it's an exhaustive report plus a summary sheet, and one of the priorities is preservation of single-family homes as affordable. And so I did think about, gee, I'd like to know more about this, because this is a very challenging idea to be able to preserve single-family homes. And if the state has a strategy, if they have something they can help us to formulate I guess I'll use the same word, a strategy toward preserving single-family homes as affordable, since the number of single-family homes that are affordable in Edina is decreasing quickly due to really redevelopers purchasing property that's at a premium. And so we had a conversation. There were three of us who went over and had a conversation with a couple of people from Minnesota Housing Finance Agency to really open the discussion, look at some grant funds that are available, see how those grant funds can be utilized. And so it's early in the conversation. It's definitely something we're saying, please tell us what we don't know, which is a lot. And so we spent about an hour. It was a good conversation, so we expect there will be more information forthcoming on that. But it's definitely us going and saying, talk to us. We need some ideas, and would like, we know what the end of the road, we know what we want that to look like. How do we get there in a way that we can do that ongoing, and not just a one shot of, gee, we've got some dollars and let's try this. But it is something we'd like to see in the long haul.
All right, good. Thank you. Any executive director comments?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. One question for you. As we reach the end of the year, one of the things that we do as staff, both for you as a city council and as an HRA, in late November, early December, we begin to plan the year ahead for your official meeting calendar. We have to take, particularly with our religious holiday policy, but also with the diversity of meetings that we have to spend a lot of time to make sure we get it right, and we don't always get it right. And we made a couple of mistakes this year, as you recall. But one of the things we want you to give some thought to this year around the HRA is how you felt about these Thursday morning meetings. So I would just want to give you a heads up. I don't need a response today. In fact, I'd prefer not to get a response today. But sometime in late November, early December, I will be needing a response from you about whether or not you'd like to continue having Thursday morning HRA meetings going forward.
Should we just each talk with you one-on-one about that?
Sure, but I will need some kind of formal response from the group to that going forward.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I think maybe the major reason we went to those Thursday morning meetings was because of our workload. Yes. And I don't know if that workload will change in 2019 or not.
No.
Oh, okay.
It might. I
All
suspect
right.
it will be more.
Anything else from anyone? Otherwise, we'll adjourn the HRA. HRA stands adjourned.